Okay, so it's very interesting to be asked to talk about performing the city, because when I saw that I was being asked to moderate this session, I felt a great deal of ambivalence. So what I'm going to do in this 9 and a bit minutes is open up what performing the city might mean in a political and aesthetic sense, and then leave it to the artists to make their critical and acute interventions with their presentations. So I'm going to make some quite broad statements and try and cover quite a lot of ground in a short period of time. So why do I say that the concept of performing the city is ambivalent? Well, it seems to me that on a very basic level, we can understand performing the city in two different and oppositional ways. We can understand the concept of performing the city as that which we do as citizen subjects, and Saskia Sassen this morning opened up what it might mean to be a citizen for us very beautifully. But it also quite often and increasingly suggests the way in which the city makes us perform, or the ways in which the city performs on us and around us, and we might say now, completely through us. So given that that is the contemporary condition of what it might mean to perform the city, why, as artists, curators, people that write and work with artists and curators, do we constantly return to this idea of the performative within the city-state? Well, I'm going to suggest that there's one particular reason we do it, and that's because it is deeply embedded in a European understanding of what the city is. And this is what I would call a post-Enlightenment European idea, an idea that was exported around the world through European colonialism, many references to which we heard this morning, and an idea that comes out of the moment in the European Enlightenment in which the division between the church and the state was established, and the development of the new citizen subject emerged as a particular type of person that performed in the city. What I'd like to suggest is that citizen subject has now become the contemporary artist. It is now the contemporary artist's role to perform the city and perform the city for us. And of course we see this constantly around the world in the form of biennials and expositions and events around art fairs, and in a series of commissions in which the artist's role, and to a certain extent the curator's role, is to perform the city on behalf of the citizens. Now, of course, at the beginning of this, I propose that there's an ambivalence around this idea of performance. There is the performance of the city that the citizen subject does in the shape of the artist, but there's also the type of performance that the city does on its subject. My concern is that what we do as a community is perform the city on the behalf of our own subjective positions, whether that is through the idea of us feeling able to speak or not speak within the city. And I'm not suggesting performing in the city is not fraught with exclusions and hierarchies of power, because of course it is. But we do that as a community whilst the financial regimes, the processes of neoliberal capitalism move on without us, and actually shape the city in which we're performing in draconian and extortionate ways that we are not part of. So I'd like to suggest, in the small amount of time that I've got left, that one of our roles is, rather than to perform the city on behalf of the artistic subject that we become when we're put in this position, rather than do that, we actually take over the mechanisms of administrative performance that are embodied within the institutions of the city itself. And I think NATO suggested this at the beginning in his talk, in his introduction this morning, when he talked about citing the logic of our activities, our actions, and our interventions at the heart of the power, in this case, of the city. Of course, there's a whole other debate about the concept of the rural that we might also want to invoke in another discussion about what we mean by performing the city, but that maybe is for another time. So, what do I mean by performing the administration of the city? Of course, a long time ago, Adorno talked to us about the aesthetics of administration, and I think it might be worth us returning to some of these ideas, particularly now, particularly because organization and administration is the site of power and the site of the organization of power. So one of the things I've been doing, and I've been doing this with lots of colleagues, many of whom are in the room on the moon. I do work with them too, okay? It's a kind of, if you work at Goldsmiths, then you get to do these really extraordinary projects. No. So many of whom are in the room, hello, my colleagues that are here. Many of us have been really thinking about organizational structures and thinking about how the site of the arts institution is the site that might begin to be the place where we can learn to practice and rehearse other modes of organization that present an alternative to the administrative logics, and here I'm very influenced by Saskia Sassen, I have to say, might present an alternative to the administrative logics of the kind of city performance that I previously described, the ways in which we are asked to perform whilst the neoliberal debate continues without us. So how do we learn to participate in that debate with an alternative function? I think there were some interesting ideas that were very much present in this morning's discussion regarding this. But for me, the important thing is to develop a way in which we, A, understand the performance of the city to be, in large part, guided and branded, we could say, following the last discussion this morning, through arts institutions, and B, think about ways in which we might want to pervert those brands sorry, I'm just completely paranoid about this time thing. You're going to remind me, aren't you? Right, sorry. I'm just got completely confused there. What am I talking about? Right, okay. So we might use arts institutions to infiltrate and repurpose the ways in which we are asked to perform so that we perform the city in the center of its power. Okay, so what do I mean by that? What I mean is that we have to start getting involved in some very boring managerial processes and understand them, as Adorno suggested, and many other people have suggested since then, as sites of administrative power that we need to perform instead of performing interstitial activities in the way that maybe biennials or artistic, public art, artistic commissions normatively understand our work to be cited. It's not a proper sentence, but anyway. Okay. So that means thinking through the ways in which the aesthetics of administration, the aesthetics of organization might be interesting sites for our intervention, and therefore proposing a different way to perform the city. One of the key art groups that I've been very informed with when I think about these kind of things is the British art collective Artist Placement Group, who worked in the late 60s and 1970s. I'm sure many people in the room are familiar with their work, and if you're not, thank you very much. That's lovely. If you're not, then there's lots of ways. Thank you so much. It's such a polite way of doing it. Huh? One of the interesting things about the Artist Placement Group is that when they shifted shape in the mid-1970s and early 1980s, they renamed themselves Art and Organization. And I think it's within the modes of organization that we need to start placing our creativity. Otherwise, creativity, the term that actually should be banned, creativity is utilized, as we all know, by the financial markets, by the capitalist procedures that actually govern the institutions that we work within. So, next time you're commissioned by an organization, an arts organization, ask them to show you their bank balance, their hierarchies of employment, ask them, how many people of color they employ, and propose to them as an artwork mechanisms to change that. And that will really begin to make us rethink what it means to perform the city. I've run out of time. I'm going to hand over to the fantastic artists that are about to talk to you. Thank you.